Hey guys, I'm excited to bring Grant Baldwin on today, and we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of what to do when you're looking to get out of a job that you hate, or finding work you love, and that whole process. I went through a little bit of that myself, and Grant is, I don't know, I think he's an expert in this area. I mean, he travels all around the country speaking, talking about this and things like this. So anyway, I'll let him kind of go into a little bit more what he does, but he's a runner. You run marathons, I believe. Is that right?
I have run marathons, ran marathons, I guess. So I wouldn't consider myself a marathoner as an ongoing experience, but I have crossed the finish line for a few.
Well, that's awesome. And then you're also a magician. Is that right?
No, I'm fascinated by it. All right, now you're just going through all the good stuff there. So I get so much grief from my family because I learned a couple of decent card tricks, and they're like, "You're adorable, but what are you doing?" And I was like, I'm just intrigued by it. I'm fascinated by it. So I could do a card trick or two, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay, my father-in-law is a magician. I mean, does magic shows and things like that. So you guys.
Does he reveal anything to you?
No, it's against the rules, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know if it's like with family he can tell you, or even family.
He might have told my wife one or two, but I think it's against the rules.
Yeah.
But anyway. So how about this? Tell us and the readers a little bit more about yourself. I went into a little bit of it, but just chat a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the nutshell on me, growing up, my youth pastor had a real big impact on my life, and so wanted to be a youth pastor, went to Bible college, did that for a bit. Parts of it I liked, parts of it I didn't. One thing I really liked, though, was I really liked speaking. I really like working with students. So really kind of, I left that position at the church and just trying to figure out, what do I want to do now? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it was a really difficult transition because I'd gone to college for this one deal. I didn't really enjoy it. Again, parts of it I did, parts of it I didn't. Didn't really want to go back and find a different church where, to be a youth pastor again. So it just kind of felt like I was back to the drawing board of, what do I do now? So that kind of set me on a journey of just trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life. And so for the past about 8 years or so, I've been a full-time speaker. So I travel all over the U.S., speaking primarily to high school and college kids, just helping them think through, prepare for life after high school, kind of where their life is going. And a lot of motivation stuff with that of your life can be whatever it is you want it to be, but it's up to you to make it happen. So so that's kind of what we've been doing. We've got a podcast now that called How'd You Get Into That, where we're just interviewing people, just figuring out what is their story, what is their journey. Because one of the things I've noticed is there's far too many people that are doing work that they hate, and they just live life where it's like, thank God it's Friday, to oh God it's Monday. You just live life like that. It's like that's just a bummer. So if we can help people figure out what it is that they were put on this planet to do, it's a fun journey to help with.
Yeah, and so, that brings up a really good point. I wrote an article a while back titled "What to Do When You Hate Your Job," because I was well acquainted with that. I have had multiple jobs, I think, that I really, some I didn't like, and a couple that would qualify as, maybe hating, where every Friday it's like the most glorious thing in the world, because I have 2 days where I don't have to be at my job, and then, Sunday afternoon, it's like, oh, it's coming,
Here it comes.
Monday's coming. And, I remember Dan Miller wrote that book, No More Mondays, and it just resonated with me. Just the idea of not having to dread Monday is just an amazing thing. And so I've been there. I know the feeling. I'm sure lots of people you talk to, lots of people I've talked to have that same kind of thing that they're trying to work out of, and maybe something that they want to do, feel called to do, whatever. So what do you suggest as a first step, starting to work out of that?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, nobody who's in a spot where they, I think some people, they really just hate what they do, and other people are like, I don't hate it, I just don't love it, and I don't know what I'd rather be doing instead, So I think there's a couple things. One, just realizing the process takes some time, and so things that are marinated taste better than things that are microwaved, So let things kind of simmer and stew. And so if you're just pondering or thinking about that, that's good. It's a step in the right direction, because realistically, you won't quit a job that you hate on Friday, and on Monday you magically wake up and it all just works out, if you found this thing. And it doesn't work like that. So I always tell people to ask themselves a couple questions. One, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that gets a reaction out of you? What are those hot button soapbox issues where that you just get fired up? You're like, don't even get me started on this. I will go off on you. So
Yeah.
what is that thing for you? It's just like, I don't know. I just get stirred up. Maybe it's environment. Maybe it's maybe it's the planet. Maybe it's nutrition. Maybe it's kids. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's it could be any number of things. What is that thing for you that you just really get passionate about? A second question I ask people is, what are you good at? What are the things that just come easy to you? What are the things that you just get? They just click. It just makes sense for you. Because I believe we all have talents. We all have abilities. We all have giftings. There's a parable of the talents of just like everybody got something. It's not like you got short change and all these people are always all blessed and you got the shaft. It doesn't work like that. Everybody has something. So what are the things for you that just naturally come to you? Another question I ask people is, like, what do you enjoy doing? Again, there's far too many people that are doing something just for the sake of a paycheck, and we all got to work, we all got to make a living, got to get a check somewhere. I'd rather do something I enjoy. I want to look forward to Mondays, and I know that so many people do as well. So just figuring out, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And then how do those things begin to translate into a career? So I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It's interesting to bring up the thing about, find out what you're passionate about. Because a lot of readers I've talked to have asked, who aren't sure about what it is they're passionate about. And I don't know, it's like they can't figure it out or whatever. And one of the things that I've always suggested to people is, if you don't know what you're excited about, maybe you should ask the loved ones around you. Yep. Ask your wife or your husband what they think you're excited about. And a lot of times that will reveal like some clues. I don't know. Are there any other tips that you have or suggestions for people as far as figuring that type of thing out?
That's what I was going to suggest. I think that's a great thing. Is sometimes we're too close to ourselves to recognize what's obvious to other people.
Yeah.
So think of it like this. If you had a best friend who had some type of like life issue going on, you may be really good at giving them advice for that situation. But if you had the exact same situation in your own life, you'd be a disaster at recognizing the advice for yourself, because you're right there. So I think the same thing is true. Is just find 5 people that really know you well, like people that really are in the trenches, they care about you, and talk to them and say, what is it that you just recognize about me? Now, having said that, I think you also have to weigh that with your own feelings, because they may say something that you're like, you seem really passionate about this, and you're like, no, that doesn't resonate with me at all. Yeah. Or they may say something, you're like, wow, I hadn't thought about it, but now that you mention it, that totally clicks with me. So you have to kind of run that through your own frame of reference and your own filter. But yeah, I think getting outside perspective is a great thing to do.
Okay, so this is a challenge, because I'm sure some of the people who are listening or watching are maybe in a situation where they're pretty far along in their career, they're kind of established, and they feel like they're kind of at a point of no return. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. I really don't like it, but how do I get out of this situation? How do I get into, scuba diving instructor or whatever that I really, really love and am passionate about? What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of people in that spot. And obviously, the older you get, the deeper that you're in, the more dependence that you have that you're trying to feed, the more difficult it is to make a change. If you're a single 20-something, it's pretty simple to start figuring out what your exit strategy is. But if you're in a high level in a company, and you've been doing it for a while, and you've got 3 kids, it can be a little more difficult for sure. So I don't want to take anything away from that. That being said, I know it's not impossible to do. For example, we had just interviewed recently a guy on our podcast who was a successful lawyer, had been a lawyer his entire career, was probably in his mid upper 40s or something, when he was just like, I'm just burnt out. I'm tired of it. He was a criminal defense attorney, like defending like murder trials, like big hardcore stuff, like really stressful stuff. Yeah. And so he ended up leaving that role as a successful attorney and started a chocolate factory. So today he's a chocolatier. And so we were even kind of just talking through that transition of how do you make that leap? I was like, what do people think? Like, you're a successful attorney, you're at the top of your game, and now all of a sudden you want to become Willy Wonka? Like, are people like just worried about you, or what are people thinking? And he said, I couldn't keep going down this path that made me miserable. in order to keep everybody else happy, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, it's much more difficult to make that transition at that stage in life, but it's not impossible. So I think you have to kind of think through your exit strategy, what your plan is. So typically people will either figure out, I need to figure out what my living expenses are and just figure out how much I have in savings and what my runway is, or just figure out what that thing is that I'm going towards and being able to build that up on the side so that realistically for a season, you're kind of working two jobs. You know, I've got my business, but then I'm also building up my new thing over here until it's at a point where I can cut back on my job, you know?
Yeah.
So you can do it one of two ways. Again, a bad plan is just to be like, well, you know, I don't like this job, forget this, I'm out. And then just like, I'm going to go find myself, you know? Well, okay, but you still have to eat and live indoors. And so you have to have something that's still coming in on a regular basis. So I think that's where you can make the transition, but you just have to be more strategic and think through how you're going to actually make that transition.
Yeah. And that's really good. I mean, and it's a good point you bring up about the practical side of the financial aspects of this, because, you know, that really can help if you think through this rather than just jumping ship. Like, I love that you said have to eat and live indoors. That made me think of
those things are important. Yeah,
made me think of a couple of those wilderness shows where people don't live indoors. But anyway, that's so funny. Okay, so all that said, what do you have in mind, or what do you recommend as far as additional tools and resources? I mean, maybe some books you've read or things along these lines that have proved to be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, when in our own transition, a lot of Dan Miller stuff was very impactful and helpful. 48 Days of the Work You Love, No More Mondays were great books, great resources.
Yeah.
I think one thing that that was really helpful for us that I don't think a lot of people take the time to do is writing. And I don't consider myself a writer, but and whenever we say writing, a lot of times we think like it's this thing that has to be published and it's the thing that's going to be read and it's no good. No. Like sometimes the point of writing and journaling specifically is more just kind of getting thoughts out of your head. So one of the things that I've found is that when you're carrying around all these different thoughts and ideas in your own head, you're carrying around a lot, but I've noticed like when I get things out on paper, whenever I scribble stuff down or I type stuff out, it creates space. Think of it like a computer. You've got only so much memory in that computer, and so the more things you have running, the more ineffective everything runs. But the fewer things that are up there, the easier and smoother everything operates. So maybe you've had it happen, and I'm sure some of the viewers and listeners have had this happen where like they have a conversation with someone. And they spew out everything that's going on in their life, and they're like, I feel so much better now just talking it through. And even if the other person didn't say anything, they're just getting it off their chest. They're getting it out of their head. I've had people who've sent me emails who've said, just writing this email out has helped me to process this whole thing. So I always tell people when we talk about those questions earlier, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? It's one thing to just, sit down and like, what am I passionate about? What am I don't know. It's something totally different to, no, I'm going to stare at a blank screen and I'm just start puking on paper here, puking on a screen of what am I actually, if I could do anything, if time, money, location were all irrelevant, if I was guaranteed success, what is it that I would want to do? So taking the time to actually do some writing, I found to be really, really helpful.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just thinking about this as you were saying that, thinking back to something you were saying a little bit earlier, but as far as the financial aspect of this, I think a lot of people will find, one of the books I read that I found really helpful was Your Money in Your Life or something like that.
Yeah.
And one of the exercises they had in there was figuring out your real salary. And that was basically calculating in your drive time, your cost of clothes to go to your corporate job, the daycare, like all these different things to actually figure out what you're actually making. And it's an astounding exercise. I mean, particularly for people maybe working in corporate jobs or in jobs that have a lot of requirements and things like that, additional expenses that come with them. And what it does is it shows you that you're earning possibly a whole lot less than you thought you were, and you could get by on a salary a whole lot lower doing something else. And so anyway, so it's caused me to look at things differently. And when I went through this process, and I remember, figuring out how much money I need to survive, And it ended up being so much less when I was working from home than when I was driving 30 miles to my corporate job, and I had to have a really dependable car because if it broke down, I couldn't make it to work, and then the world, comes to an end type of thing. So anyway, so that's something that I assume that you've had that experience or seen people who've made this transition kind of maybe step down to a lower salary and have been okay with it, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great exercise to figure out, just from a budgeting standpoint. Before you make a budget, you got to figure out where does your money actually go. Yeah. And so, I always tell people where you think your money goes and where your money actually goes are two totally different things. But you don't know unless you actually keep track of that, unless you actually write it down. But once you kind of figure out like what your base is, then you can kind of backtrack and figure out what do I actually need to make it work. A lot of times people are nervous about leaving the safety and security of their current gig, knowing that, well, I don't really know what I'm walking into in the unknown. But, if you really boil it down to like, what's the absolute worst that could happen? Absolute worst that can happen. What are the chances of that thing actually happen is really, really small. And so if you, the trade-off there is, well, I leave the safety security of what I've known, which I think, we could argue and debate whether or not that is safe and secure. Yeah. But if I leave that thing that I've known and go to the unknown, and let's say that worst case scenario, I make less, but I'm happier and I enjoy my life more. Like I found that most people would rather make less, but love what they do, than make a lot of money and hate their life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rich people that hate what they do. Yeah. And money's nice. And, I'd prefer, if we all go to work, I'd rather make more than less. But, I'd rather really, really enjoy what I do as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was, I still remember my transition. I was building up this website, Christian PF, and I had been working on it about a year and a half, and then I had gotten laid off for my job, and I decided I'm going to go at this full time. We're making a little bit from it, but I wanted to just push it and see if we could make it a full time gig. And I remember it was like the first or second day of after being laid off and my freedom, and I remember thinking, this is so amazing. It's like I don't care if I make $8 an hour my entire life, just the freedom of not having to go to a job I really didn't like was worth it. And so there's absolutely truth to that it's so much more important than money. Like there's so much more there. So
yeah, for sure. And I think it's just, again, leaving in anything in life, in business and relationship and whatever, going from the known to the unknown is a massive, massive leap. But, I think that's part of the journey of faith, is you don't always have it all figured out, and you just kind of, some of it you just kind of blindly follow through and stumble through and figure it out as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, tell everybody where they can find out more about you, and
all that jazz. Yeah,
all that jazz.
So the podcast is called How'd You Get Into That? We do 2 episodes a week, just again interviewing people, just interesting, inspiring people like the lawyer turned Willy Wonka. People just doing interesting types of work, just to hear their story and journey of how they got into what they're doing. So you can find all that at grantbaldwin.com. Hit me up on Twitter at Grant Baldwin, or feel free to email me as well, grant@grantbaldwin.com. So anything I can do to help you and support you, let me know.
All right, Grant. Well, I appreciate you being on. I think this is really good, and I'm excited to share it. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, take care.